Machiavellianism is a tendency to desire status and control. Like they really want to be in charge. They want to be empowered. They want maybe fame or money, whatever that is. And they have a really amoral approach to manipulation, meaning like they're very willing to kiss someone's butt to get ahead, but they're also just as willing to like spread rumors or tell lies to do that. And they're not particularly bothered. They're just like, what do I need to get, to the top of the food chain here? And they're willing to do that.
So somebody will step on your head or spread lies about you in order to get what they want?
Yeah, totally.
Here, I know we have a visual. Let's pull this sucker up.
Yes, we do have a visual. Okay, so this one, we got the chess pieces, right? So he's knocking you off the board.
Yes.
Right? So you're in the way, knocking you off the board. I think, what this depicts is essentially this very strategic social style. So like where we talked about psychopathy, having that kind of impulsive nature, right? This is different. This is like they're willing to like kind of plan things out. They're like, oh, Mel told me something kind of embarrassing. I'm going to like put that in my back pocket and I'll bring that back up later whenever I kind of need to turn the screws on her or something like that.
Is this the kind of person where I think we've all had that experience where you have this sense that somebody is turning it on and showing up when they need something. And the second that they have gotten what they needed and used you for a particular purpose, you're gone.
Yeah, absolutely. I spoke to some people who especially like at work would see this kind of behavior, very strategic, pushing people out very subtly, managing up to the boss to try to get what they want. And these people tend to be very, unsatisfied with their current position and like always gunning for something better. Yeah.
What does this look like in a family?
That's a great question. Usually we think about it at work, but in a family, again, it would be just that desire for power, control over other people, and probably very willing to, create these divisions maybe between, the cousins and the uncles and the whatever, create divisions so that they come out on top. So yeah, it would be very similar, right? So like we take our personalities with us wherever we go. Right. So same kinds of strategies, but just playing out in a different context.
How do you spot a Machiavellian personality style at work? Like what are some of the behavior patterns that you should just pay attention to?
So this is good. What's really going to be helpful here is talking to other people.
About that person?
Uh-huh.
Why?
So my dear postdoc advisor, Dr. Dacher Keltner.
Yes, who's been on this podcast. We love him, The Science of Awe.
He's amazing. He did this study on gossip in a sorority. And essentially, he asked everyone to fill out a measure of their Machiavellian traits. And then he also asked the girls, like, who do you talk about? Who gets talked about, like, in private conversations, right? Who's well-liked, who has status, and who is respected. And what he found is that the people who were gossiped about the most were people who were not well-liked, but they were well-known. And they weren't well-liked because they were highly Machiavellian, and people perceived them as having status that they didn't really deserve.
Oh.
And so this is a situation in which, it can be really helpful to maybe not take all rumors as face value, right? But pay attention, because people are going to be talking about these individuals because they're so power hungry and because they are often like, stepping over other people to get to where they want
Yeah,
to
it
be.
doesn't seem fair that
Exactly.
they have the job they have, or they have the attention of the boss, or they have the title that they have, because behind the scenes, we all know they either manipulated their way there or they didn't earn it.
Yeah.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot. You could see that playing out in a family
Yeah.
where you have somebody that becomes the favorite and who is also always stirring up drama and always sucking the energy out of the room.
Yeah.
And it doesn't seem fair.
Right. Yeah, and it can be hard to see, because they use manipulation and they use it quite strategically. Like it can be hard to see through at the start. I think that's what's hard about all of these personality traits is that they've got manipulation at the core of them, right?
How do you define manipulation?
Manipulation is just the willingness to use other people to your own ends. And so you're essentially like pulling the strings on other people, changing their perspective, perhaps by telling lies or half-truths.
So it sounds like, because I was about to say, aren't we all like using other people? But what you just said, though, is very important. You basically said you're willing to do whatever it takes to use people. Like, I suppose on some level, we all hope that our friends reciprocate.
Yeah.
We all hope that by, being loving and kind, you're going to get it back. But that's not a form of manipulation because I'm not deceiving you in some way. Is that a fair way to think about it? Because I often struggle with the fact that, this is kind of probably a conversation for after we finish these 4 personality traits, but here's something I struggle with. Like, I know people are wildly stressed out and overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And there's a lot going on with the state of the world. And you never know what somebody is dealing with. And I also recognize that you typically are not dealing with the actual person in front of you. You're dealing with their childhood issues and their emotional state and whether or not they've eaten anything and their tolerance for emotions and blah, bitty, blah, bitty, blah, bitty, blah. But so I often try to give people the benefit of the doubt from a very safe distance.
Yeah.
But we are living in a moment in time where the behavior of people in public, the behavior of people online, the acting out in families, it just seems like toxic behavior has skyrocketed. And so I am just trying to discern when that somebody's truly being manipulative versus somebody is having a super bad week.
Yeah.
Or they're just really at a point because of the stuff going on that you don't know about, that they're emotionally flooded. And they didn't intend to be this way, but they're walking all over. Do you know what I mean?
Totally. So you could be like consistently callous and manipulative, right?
Yep.
And therefore you probably have high levels of these dark traits. But that doesn't mean that the rest of us are never callous and manipulative, right? And there's often situations that are more likely to bring that behavior out. And you're right that the world right now, it seems like it is pushing on a lot of those situational factors that increase the likelihood that we'll behave in these kinds of ways. So, I mean, we can probably all think of a time when we were not our best selves, right? And
I feel bad about that, though.
Yeah.
And I apologize for it. And
Exactly.
I then beat myself up over it. And what you're saying, I'm starting to discern, Dr. Ten Brink, is that a person with dark personality traits actually does not.
No. I mean, especially psychopathy a lack of guilt and remorse is like core to what that personality is.
Is that the kind of person that also holds grudges?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, obviously, I'm thinking of somebody that I know. Dr. Ten Brink, what's the number one sign you're being manipulated?
So if this person wants something from you, maybe it's your time, your money, your influence, and if they seem to be a different person around you than everyone else, I think that's a big red flag that you're not seeing who they are. So, early in romantic relationships, we'll hear about, love bombing. And, this person seemed like the perfect partner. They were always texting me. They sent flowers. They want the same things that I want out of this relationship. All seems great, just the two of us. But look at how they treat the Uber driver, the barista, the hostess at the restaurant, especially when they don't think you're looking. And if you start to see that consistent kind of cruel treatment of people that are not you, I think that pattern is going to come for you eventually, because the broader pattern is bad. It's a dark personality kind of pattern. Eventually, you're not going to be the exception anymore. You're going to become part of the rule. And I think, seeing that kind of deviation when you are the deviation, that I think is a problem.
Let's talk about narcissism.
Okay.
So what is the clearest sign that you're dealing with somebody that has the dark personality of narcissism?
Okay. Got another visual. Narcissism. All right. So here we've got someone looking into a broken mirror, and you see kind of the cracks in the facade here. And I think essentially what this is kind of pointing out is that what you see is not really what you get. This signifies to me kind of a vulnerable type of narcissism where their ego is actually really easily shattered. Grandiose narcissism is kind of the opposite of that, where their ego cannot be deflated, even though they're getting kind of feedback that it should be. But at the core of both of those kinds of narcissism is entitlement and exploitation of other people in order to get that, what they think they deserve, which is more than most other people. And I think it's really helpful to try to identify those things early if you can, because those traits look really attractive early on, and they are the exact same traits that lead to problems a little bit later. So there's this one study that I love, Delroy Paulhaus at UBC. He did this study of groups of students, and they were working together over the course of a term, right? And week one, they all, got together in their new groups, and they made these little first impressions of people. And it turns out that the people who were the most narcissistic in those groups were originally seen as really agreeable, really well-adjusted, and very competent.
Really? That was the first impression?
Yeah. And
agreeable?
Mm-hmm. And then week 7, he asked them to do those same ratings again. Those same people were seen as arrogant braggarts who were actually really hostile and who overestimated their abilities, right? So it's kind of there's this sheen at the start, and it quickly wears off when you start to realize the person they are putting forward is not the person they actually are. So there tends to be a lot of self-enhancement. Some early cues, might be having lots of confidence, coming across very confident in your kind of verbal and nonverbal presentation, the way you carry yourself. They tend to be very concerned about their physical appearance. So they tend to be quite stylish and like put a lot of effort into their appearance. And so it can be really hard to kind of pull apart what is the real person and what is like the impression that they're trying to make. And sometimes it's like time that is going to reveal that.
You said that there were kind of the two camps of the narcissistic personalities, one being grandiose, which I think we all have somebody in mind you can think of that represents that.
Yeah.
Whether it's in your family or at work or, in public here in the United States. But vulnerable.
Yeah.
Because I think these can be sneakier.
Mm-hmm.
And like, you don't realize that's what you're dealing with. And so can you talk a little bit about how the vulnerable narcissistic personality shows up? Like, what are we looking for? Because I think this one's really sneaky.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So with respect to vulnerable narcissism, like the entitlement and the willingness to exploit other people is still involved, just like for grandiose narcissism. But they tend to have a real fragility to their ego. Like they're almost looking for, your admiration to prop up something that's like not there, right? And they tend to be very defensive and somewhat avoidant. And I think learning a little bit about what triggers these two different kind of types of narcissists is actually pretty revealing. So the grandiose type tends to get very angry when there's like a failure, because they are supposed to be incredible and amazing, and they're going to be pissed whenever, they don't get that job. They don't get the promotion. They don't get, the raise at work. Whereas for a vulnerable narcissist, because they're kind of getting that ego boost from other people, it's rejection that really upsets them. And so if, they get broken up with, or someone just doesn't treat them very nicely, they tend to really react strongly to that kind of thing.
How can this show up in a family, especially in the vulnerable narcissist? Like, is this the person that flies off the handle because you can't make it home this weekend? Is this the person that's just constantly giving you the guilt trip if you're not doing everything you wanted them to do because meeting expectations? If you don't do it, it's the rejection piece.
Right.
Like, how does this show up in a family?
Yeah, so, they're going to have those same traits, right? So the entitlement, so like whatever they want the family to do.
After everything I've done for you.
Yes, exactly. Very willing to manipulate people. So using guilt trip, whatever it would be that would like work to kind of push you around. And in addition to that, it's like rejection. So yeah, if you don't come to the birthday party, if you don't make it to the retirement party or whatever, you don't come home for Christmas, that is going to really, set someone with vulnerable narcissism off. Whereas someone who's more grandiose narcissism, like they kind of dirt off their shoulder, right? So like they're
You don't
them,
exist,
they're
so
big,
I don't care.
whatever.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Gotcha. Okay, that's so interesting. What about the fourth dark personality, which is sadism? What is sadism?
Sadism is essentially having an appetite for cruelty.
Ooh. Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
And, yeah. So it's centered around finding enjoyment in the pain of other people.
Enjoyment?
Mm-hmm.
Oh. Like, oh, my God. That's awful.
Yeah. Oh, Yeah, so we've got a depiction of this one too. Let's
Oh,
see. Sadism. Okay. So here we've got someone who is, taking some control over the situation. I might actually add little knives or something.
oh my gosh. So this is a visual that Dr. Ten Brink is holding if you're listening. There's a person that's big above and then a little person that's almost like on puppet strings being manipulated. But you're saying they take pleasure in hurting other people. And so if you were to add anything, you would literally stab the person that's at the end of the... Oh my, that's terrible.
Man, they get enjoyment out of pain. And what's so interesting about your reaction is there are those very extreme versions of this. Like when I was an undergrad, I was coding these descriptions of sexual homicides, and I was coding them for evidence of gratuitous violence and sadistic violence. And those are obviously these very extreme examples, right? But there's more everyday versions.
What?
So things like enjoying really violent sports, maybe, enjoying you're scrolling through Instagram or something and you see a video of a kid getting hit with a soccer ball and you find that funny. Little kind of everyday sadism is what it's called. And I think we think of these people as monsters, right? But we can probably all think of a time when we felt something sort of adjacent. So let me try this on you. So imagine that you are thinking about, someone really powerful, maybe a politician, a CEO of some company that you dislike, and they are walking across the stage to give a speech and they trip and they fall. How do you react?
I guess I might be like, you deserve that.
Yeah, there might be a little smirk might come on your face just for a second.
Know why? And you know what I would call it? Karma. She's a bitch, and she just came for you because you didn't deserve that, title. And so I can see what you mean by that's a
just
example of
tiny
a
piece.
micro sadism.
So this is the Germans have a great word for this, is Schadenfreude, and it is taking joy in the misfortune of someone else. And often we experience this when it's someone who's in a position of power and they kind of fall or falter or something like that. And so that's, kind of an everyday sadism kind of experience.
Well, let me tease that out a little bit more. Because I was very intrigued when you said a micro everyday form of sadism is watching very violent sports. Or maybe even watching extremely violent horror movies.
Yeah.
And really seeing that as a form of entertainment that you like. And when I think about the example of somebody that you don't like tripping and you taking a small amount of there's a part of me that feels like it's justice. You know what I'm saying? For somebody who doesn't deserve the power that they have, how do you know the difference between something that might feel like they're getting what's due versus taking pleasure in seeing someone else suffer, if that makes sense? Or is it the same thing and I'm just putting a better label on it?
I think what it would be is just kind of different places on that spectrum.
Got it.
Right?
Okay.
So someone who scores really high on sadism might be like, oh yeah, I love, violent sports. I love violent video games because I enjoy seeing, the heads blow off the characters or whatever. And I also love, trolling people online because it gives me kind of a thrill to just bring cut people down a notch. Yeah, exactly. And so they might also feel Schadenfreude, right? But they would be like, yes, yes, yes to all of these different items that we present to them. And you would be like, yeah, a little bit on one item, right? So you would be pretty low on that spectrum and they would be pretty high.
So when there's a pile-on online and people are just tearing somebody down. Those are examples of microsadism.
Yeah, so there's great research showing that people who score higher in sadism also tend to be more likely to engage in online trolling. And it's actually like a small proportion of the internet. It feels like a lot of the internet, right? But it's actually a pretty small proportion of people.
Why should microsadism, somebody in your life that is really into violent sports or loves seeing heads blown off on video games, should that concern you?
I think, as with all of these things, I kind of file them away and I'm like, I'm going to hold on to that red flag and I'm going to think about how I need to interact with you and whether this personality trait is going to get in the way of that. If you've got, like, I don't know, a brother or a cousin who's like, I love UFC. I mean, this is not necessarily like a throw them away kind of situation, right? It's like he might, score relatively low on all of the other aspects of sadism and not a problem whatsoever. It might be part of a personality pattern that is a much bigger problem.
Gotcha.
And so you're looking for evidence of this like over time and across context. It's not just in sports, right? It's not just in conversations with you. It's also at work. It's also, at home with his own family.
So, Dr. Ten Brink, what are the signs that someone is being terrible just temporarily versus they truly have dark personality traits?
So if you're just coming into the situation at that moment, it's going to be very difficult to discern. What you really need is time.
Okay.
Because someone who is, has high levels of these dark traits are that way consistently across time and context. Whereas someone who, is stressed, is tired, is hungry, etc., and they do something
Are examples of microsadism?
Yeah, so there's great research showing that people who score higher in sadism also tend to be more likely to engage in online trolling. And it's actually like a small proportion of the internet. It feels like a lot of the internet, right? But it's actually a pretty small proportion of people.
Why should microsadism, somebody in your life that is really into violent sports or loves seeing heads blown off on video games, should that concern you?
I think, as with all of these things, I kind of file them away and I'm like, I'm going to hold on to that red flag and I'm going to think about how I need to interact with you and whether this personality trait is going to get in the way of that. If you've got, like, I don't know, a brother or a cousin who's like, I love UFC. I mean, this is not necessarily like a throw them away kind of situation, right? It's like he might, score relatively low on all of the other aspects of sadism and not a problem whatsoever. It might be part of a personality pattern that is a much bigger problem.
Gotcha.
And so you're looking for evidence of this like over time and across context. It's not just in sports, right? It's not just in conversations with you. It's also at work. It's also, at home with his own family.
So, Dr. Ten Brink, what are the signs that someone is being terrible just temporarily versus they truly have dark personality traits?
So if you're just coming into the situation at that moment, it's going to be very difficult to discern. What you really need is time.
Okay.
Because someone who is, has high levels of these dark traits are that way consistently across time and context. Whereas someone who, is stressed, is tired, is hungry, etc., and they do something callous, they do something cruel, that is a deviation from their normal pattern of behavior. So having like a bigger scope of information about this person is going to help you to see whether that's like, that tracks, or more like, oh, that was a weird thing that they just did.
Dr. Ten Brink, you say that within 10 seconds, even of meeting somebody, you can spot a dark personality trait. What are you looking for?
Okay, so bit of a good news, bad news situation here is that good news, people with very little training can detect with some kernel of truth the extent to which someone has psychopathic personality traits or not, just like 5 seconds.
5 seconds?
5 seconds of their behavior. It's not perfect, and it might need to be updated over time, but let's talk about this research. So this was work done by Scott Lilienfeld and his colleagues, and he had videos of men who were incarcerated. They were actually doing a semi-structured interview with a psychologist that was part of a psychopathy assessment. And so he had, trained psychologists who were doing this long interview and like criminal case review to try to assess these personality traits. And then he took 5 seconds or like 10-second clips of this interview and showed them to people who just had, a little definition of what psychopathy was, kind of like we did earlier in this episode.
And just for a refresher, psychopathy is when you are manipulative and callous, but you also are a rule breaker and you're impulsive. Is that right?
Exactly.
You're at it. Okay.
Yeah.
Got you.
So gave completely untrained people that little definition that you just gave, and 5 seconds of their behavior and said, where do you think they fall on this kind of spectrum of psychopathy? And the ratings that these untrained people gave were reasonably correlated with like the trained psychologists who had the benefit of like a much longer interview and this criminal case file review.
Okay.
So we're like, what are they looking at? Right. So my colleagues and I, we reached out to Scott and we're like, can we get these videos? We want to code. We want to know what people are looking at. And what we found was that the people with high levels of psychopathy were saying really hostile things and smiling broadly. We call it a Duchenne smile. You got those little crinkles around your eyes that go along with the upturned lips.
All I heard was douche, and I'm like, okay, yeah, sounds like somebody would smile as they're saying something like cruel.
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah, exactly. So we're getting this like extreme kind of discordance between the things they're saying and the way that they're expressing it. And people kind of naturally were like, that's weird. I think that's associated with psychopathy. And that was a reasonably useful cue in this case. There are other things that you can look forward to. So high psychopathy folks are more likely to interrupt you in conversation, but refuse to be interrupted themselves. they ignore those personal and professional boundaries. They might be kind of like oddly calm. So like they're not showing like guilt or shame whenever you would expect that to be the case, which they have an air of moral superiority about them. They might be unusually angry, and they might get frustrated when they can't bait you into an argument. Like if you don't take the bait, they're looking for that hostility. And if you don't give it to them, they can get frustrated. So like none of these are a Pinocchio's nose, right? They're not, there's no one behavior that's always going to be like, all people with high levels of psychopathy do this all of the time. But if you start seeing this pattern unfolding, across multiple interactions, that's when you can be, increasingly confident that this personality trait is present.
Why are people with dark personality traits so often in leadership and powerful roles?
This is a great question, which I've spent many a moon thinking about. There's I think a whole bunch of different reasons. The first one, I think we overlook, which is just that they want it. Like when we study narcissism, often we have people do self-report. So they're just reporting on their own personality. One of those items is, I am a born leader. And you're like, how much do you agree with that statement? If you're like, yeah, I am a born leader, then you're probably also gunning for that promotion at work. Like you're going to be more likely to put yourself forward for a high status position. So that's one thing. Another is that we tend to be really blinded by their confidence. Like we confuse confidence with competence. And so when people, come across with like a lot of bravado, they say they can and they have done all of these. And whenever you're talking about people who tend to be pumping themselves up and are willing to lie in order to get what they want, like that can be quite misleading.
What is gaslighting, Dr. ten Brink, and what is not gaslighting?
Yeah, so I think people throw around like, are you gaslighting me? Like even when there's like a little bit of confusion or like you interpreted a situation a little bit differently than I did. Yep. Or, if something doesn't make sense to them. And there's like a kernel of truth in the way that we're using that, but it's certainly overused. It's not just, having a different perspective on things. It's not just a disagreement. It is a type of psychological and emotional abuse that involves someone attempting to make another person feel crazy by creating this kind of like surreal environment around them. So it's not just like isolating or intimidating or minimizing someone. It's trying to make them like not trust their own mind, their memories, their reactions, their like experience of the world. And our brains are essentially like prediction machines. And so whenever we get feedback from another person that like all the predictions that you are making are wrong, it can be really destabilizing. And I think what's most concerning about it is when you start to feel like I can't trust my own mind's interpretation of events, so I need your interpretation. And that can create this real sense of dependence on another person and isolation from other people. So compared to other types of abuse, we actually have relatively little research on gaslighting. But we do know that people with high levels of dark personality traits endorse this kind of behavior in romantic relationships. Like people were asked, yeah, what do you think about, telling someone that, that didn't actually happen that way, or their reactions are completely outsized, or trying to make them doubt their experience of the world. And people with higher levels of all the dark personality traits that we talked about today were like, that seems fine. So that can be, incredibly destabilizing and difficult to get out of.
Can a person with a dark personality change?
So personalities can change. They tend to change very little over time, especially if people are not committed to that kind of change. And people with dark personalities tend not to be very concerned about changing themselves.
Well, if you're callous, manipulative, and hostile,
yeah,
then why would you change?
Exactly. They see it as more of this is a you problem, not a me problem, right? So they tend not to have a whole lot of commitment to therapy. Now, the research that we do have, say, on psychopathy in particular, suggests that if people will stay in therapy for like multiple sessions, they can reduce, it's almost like a harm reduction in their behavior. So most of this research is with incarcerated men. And the outcome that we're looking at is recidivism. So likelihood that they will commit another offense when they get released. And the guys who stick with treatment longer are less likely to engage in recidivism and come back to prison. So that's amazing. That's an improvement. They do not become dramatically different people. Like they don't become, the most kind and honest person. We're not looking at a personality 180 here, but you can get reduction in some of perhaps more problematic behavior.
Well, the reason why I ask you that is because I remember Dr. Ramani Diversala, who specializes in narcissistic personality disorders, once said something to me that changed the way that I forever deal with a person in my life who clearly has all the traits. And what she basically said is the single thing that is creating so much pain and frustration when you're dealing with somebody, once you recognize these dark traits, is your belief and hope that the other person will change.
Yeah.
And holding out hope for a fantasy of what might happen if you twist yourself in knots, or you stay for 10 more years, or you just lower your voice, or you bake more cupcakes, or have more sex, or show up at Christmas. That hope for the fantasy keeps you from recognizing the reality of what you're dealing with.
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts on sort of that perspective?
I mean, I think she's totally right. Is that like my commitment to someone else changing really doesn't have anything to do with their commitment or ability to change. And so, someone's personality is, as we've been talking about, their consistent way of thinking, feeling, and behaving, not how you feel about it. That's not part of the definition. So like your reaction to their personality
or wish,
or wish
hope,
is like
or dream.
It's not part of it. It's not relevant. But it hurts whenever you are like, I'm doing all of the things that I can possibly do to change you. I think there are ways that we can approach interactions with people with dark personalities to make them a little smoother, to like make it just makes it like less likely that this interaction is going to ruin my whole day. It's not going to change their personality, but it's going to just like, okay, we can reduce the stress like day-to-day interaction.
Okay. So let's take an example. So, as you've been listening to Dr. Ten Brink, I bet you're imagining somebody that you have to deal with, whether they're in your family or there's somebody that you see at work or they're in your friend group. Maybe it's a neighbor who is particularly difficult and hostile to deal with, or maybe it's your ex. Like a lot of people have situations with exes, especially when there's custody issues that have a lot of dark personality stuff coming up. So when you recognize that you're dealing with somebody with these traits, and you also recognize the truth that you have no control over them changing, but when you recognize the situation, you could maybe change how you approach the situation to reduce its impact on you.
Yeah.
I would love for you to speak directly to the person who's listening, because you have taught us so much today and really helped us to see both that this is on a continuum, that there's only certain things you can control, which is how you're going to show up, and that there are things to do here, one of them not being that the other person's changing. If the person listening takes just one action after hearing everything that you've taught us, what do you think the most important thing to do after listening to this is?
I think it's to slow down, because personality is a pattern. We keep talking about this over and over again. And it's a pattern that as a spouse or as a friend or a coworker, you don't have a whole lot of ability to change, right? So take some time to get to know someone before you commit in whatever ways you need to commit to that relationship. I think we're all looking for like this magic bullet, this like one behavior I can see and you can be like, you're in and you're out, right?
Yeah.
But that's kind of like trying to see an entire puzzle when you're just holding one piece in your hand. And so I think in addition to slowing down, don't do it alone. Like, we know that we are better at detecting lies, at discerning people's personalities, and at managing relationships when we do it with other people that we trust and we know. And maintaining that supportive social network is just so important. Like, you're going to need them to identify the bad apple. You're going to need them if you've got to get out of a situation with the bad apple. And so, they're going to help you escape if you decide to leave, and they're going to help you muddle through it if you decide to stay. And so, like, staying connected to other people, I think, is so important.
Dr. Ten Brink, what are your parting words?
So I think it's important to end this conversation by like putting it into context, right? So about 1% of the general population would meet the clinical criteria for psychopathy. About 10% of the population on average would like agree with the self-report statements that we use to measure dark personality traits. And that sounds like a lot, Mel. It does. But it's so important to flip that statistic around. That means 9 out of 10 people are not callous and manipulative and impulsive and antisocial. They are honest and they are kind and they are helpful. And if you take the time to get to know people, I bet you'll be surprised at how many good people there are out there. There's such a lack of trust in society right now. And I think some of it is really misplaced. So I hope people don't let this malevolent few that can have such a huge negative impact on our lives keep us from enjoying a life with all the benevolent, amazing people out there.
Oh, Dr. Ten Brink, I'm so happy you ended there, because you're right. After you hear all this, you start to just feel like you're in a dark cave surrounded by dark personalities.
Yeah, it can be a bummer.
The bigger zoom out is that it's probably one person.
Yeah.
It's probably one person that has been causing the massive amount of stress in your life.
Yeah.
And I really hope that as you've been listening, you take to heart what Dr. Ten Brink has taught us and understand that when you spot these traits, okay, you now recognize what you're dealing with. And you got to assume this person's not changing. And if you're going to choose smarter about how you're showing up, and you can think about what motivates a dark personality, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah, it can feel like, it's a dark personalities world and we're just living in it. But if we can learn how to identify those people and either avoid or approach those interactions a little more strategically, it means that we can dramatically reduce the amount of stress and pain that we feel throughout our lives by just learning how to deal with one person.
well, we all have that one person that's causing 90% of the stress. So I appreciate that you walked us through all of this in depth and really explained it so we can see what's just normal stress and immaturity and what's really something that you need to protect yourself from. So Dr. Ten Brink, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Mel.
And thank you.